I was a 20-year-old college student, broke and exhausted, when I boarded the 11:30 p.m. bus back to the city after visiting my grandparents in the countryside. It was one of those old, rattling buses with flickering lights and seats that smelled like stale cigarettes. I just wanted to sleep, but the moment I slumped into my seat, a man slid in beside me without a word. He was tall, too tall, with greasy black hair that clung to his forehead like wet tape, and his fingers kept twitching against his knees like he was typing on an invisible keyboard. I gave him a polite nod and shoved my earbuds in, but within minutes, I felt his eyes burning into the side of my face. Not the usual quick glance strangers give you. No, this was a slow, deliberate stare, like he was memorizing me. Then the murmuring started. At first, I thought he was on the phone, but when I risked a sideways glance, his lips were moving silently, his gaze locked on me. My stomach twisted. I turned up my music, but his voice slithered through anyway, whispering numbers, addresses, fragments of sentences that made no sense. Third floor, left window. Do you lock it? My breath hitched. Was he talking to me? I pretended to sleep, but then his hand brushed my arm as he adjusted his phone. The screen was angled right at me. Recording. My pulse roared in my ears. Why? I didn't move until my stop, then bolted off the bus without looking back. When I finally got home, I double-locked the door and leaned against it, trying to shake off the paranoia. Maybe I'd overreacted. The guy was just weird, not necessarily dangerous. I dumped my backpack on the floor, grabbed a beer, and distracted myself with YouTube until my hands stopped trembling. But when I unzipped my bag to grab my charger, a folded slip of paper tumbled out, something I definitely hadn't put there. My stomach dropped. It was a receipt from a gas station, but scribbled on the back in jagged, hurried handwriting was my full name, address, and a crude sketch of my apartment building's layout. The edges were smudged, like someone had gripped it too tight with sweaty fingers. How? I'd never taken my bag off on the bus. I spent the night barricaded in my room, texting my roommate to come home early from his trip. By dawn, I'd almost convinced myself it was a prank, until my phone buzzed with an unknown number. No greeting, just, "Miss your travel buddy yet?" I froze. The next message was a photo, a blurry shot of my bus seat, taken from the man's perspective. My throat went dry. I blocked the number, but by afternoon, a new one popped up. "You left your scarf." I hadn't worn a scarf. Then came a third. "I can see your balcony from here." I sprinted to the window, yanking the curtains shut. Outside, the street was empty, but parked across the road was a familiar-looking, beat-up sedan. The driver's seat was shadowed, but I swear something glinted, like eyes reflecting light. The next morning, I called the police, but they brushed it off. No direct threat, just creepy messages. Useless. My roommate, Jake, finally came back, but even his usual jokes about my paranoia died when I showed him the note. His face went pale. "Dude, this isn't just some weirdo. This guy planned something." That's when we noticed the scratches around the lock on our balcony door. Fresh, like someone had tried to pry it open. Jake insisted we set up his old laptop as a makeshift security camera, pointing it at the hallway. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every creak in the building. Around 3 a.m., my phone buzzed again. A video this time, grainy, dark, but unmistakably shot inside our building's stairwell. The timestamp? 20 minutes ago. The camera panned slowly toward our door before cutting to black.by day 3. The messages shifted from taunting to intimate. "You snore when you sleep on your left side," one read. I never told anyone that. Another came with a close-up photo of my coffee mug from that morning, still steaming on my desk. My hand shook so badly, I spilled water all over my keyboard. Jake and I tore the apartment apart, looking for hidden cameras or bugs, but found nothing. That's when the delivery started. A package arrived with no return address. Inside, a cheap bus ticket stub, the same route I'd taken, and a single black glove, stiff with something dried and crusty. Blood? Jake called the cops again, but they just took a report and left. That night, I heard it, faint, rhythmic knocking on the balcony glass. Not loud enough to wake Jake, just loud enough for me to know it wasn't the wind that I started sleeping with a kitchen knife under my pillow, jumping at every noise. The worst part? The messages began referencing things that happened inside my apartment. "You should really clean your shower drain. The clog is disgusting." I hadn't told anyone about that. Then came the voicemails, just heavy breathing at first, but then a raspy whisper, "I like watching you sleep." My blood turned to ice when I realized the camera on my laptop had a tiny green light that turned on when active. One night, I saw it flicker on by itself at 2:17 a.m. I threw the laptop in the bathtub and smashed it with a hammer, my hands shaking so badly I could barely grip the handle. The next morning, I found a new note taped to our door. That was rude. "Now I'll have to come closer." Jake and I decided to set a trap. We pretended to leave for the weekend, but hid in the neighbor's apartment across the hall. For hours, we took turns watching our door through the peephole. Around midnight, we heard its slow, deliberate footsteps coming up the stairs. My mouth went dry as I saw a shadow stop outside our door. The figure just stood there, motionless for what felt like hours. Then came the sound of metal scraping against metal as something slid under our door. Another note. I nearly screamed when my phone vibrated in my pocket at that exact moment. Warm in there? The AC in 4B works better. He knew exactly where we were hiding. We bolted out the back fire escape and drove to a motel 20 miles away, too terrified to look back. The motel room smelled like mildew and cigarettes, but at least it felt temporarily safe. I couldn't shake the image of that shadowy figure standing perfectly still outside our door. Around 3 a.m., the motel phone rang, an old landline we hadn't even noticed. Jake answered, then immediately dropped the receiver like it burned him. He described the pajamas I'm wearing. Jake stammered, his face white as a sheet. We piled furniture against the door and sat back to back, staring at the windows. That's when we heard the scratching, slow, methodical drags of something sharp against the outside wall. It moved from window to window, pausing at each one like it was testing them. The next morning, we found muddy handprints on the outside of our second-floor window that we went to the police station and refused to leave until someone took us seriously. A detective finally listened when we showed her all the evidence, the notes, the texts, the voicemails. Her expression changed when she saw the last photo we'd received. A picture of me taking out the trash, taken from inside our building's laundry room. "This isn't just stalking," she said quietly. "This is someone who's been inside multiple times without you knowing." She arranged for a patrol car to watch our motel that night. For the first time in days, I felt a flicker of hope. That hope died at midnight when the detective called. The officer assigned to watch us had been found unconscious in his car, a note tucked in his vest, mine. We fled to my parents' house 3 states away, not telling anyone where we were going. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I started to breathe again. Then, on the 15th day, my mother handed me a letter that had arrived with no postmark. Inside was a bus ticket, the same route number as that first fateful ride, and a single sentence: "You can't hide from your travel buddy." That night, I saw him standing across the street, his face hidden in shadows, but his posture unmistakable, that same unnatural stillness. I called the police, but when they arrived, he was gone. The only trace was a single black glove left on our porch, identical to the first one, still warm from being worn. The last message came a month later, after we'd moved again and changed all our contact information. It was slipped under the door of our new apartment, a place we'd told no one about. Just 5 words: "I found better company now." Attached was a news clipping about a missing college student in another state, last seen boarding a late-night bus. The police found his backpack with a familiar-looking note inside. We never heard from the stalker again, but I still check every bus window I pass, searching for that greasy black hair and twitching fingers. And sometimes, when my phone buzzes with an unknown number, I freeze completely, because part of me knows he's still out there, finding new travel buddies. I've always been an early riser. There's something about the quiet of dawn, the way the city park feels like it belongs only to you for those few precious hours. That's why I started my morning runs there. Just me, the crunch of gravel under my sneakers, and the occasional squirrel darting across the path. It was my ritual, my escape from the chaos of my marketing job and the cramped apartment I could barely afford. The first time I noticed him, I didn't think much of it. Just a guy in his 40s, Maybe with a camera too expensive for casual hobbyists. The kind with a long lens, the kind you'd use to capture something far away. He stood near the old oak tree, motionless, like he'd been waiting. I jogged past, gave him the polite half-smit you reserve for strangers, and forgot about him by the next bend in the trail. But then he was there again the next day, and the next. Always in the same spot, camera raised, silent. No tripod, no wandering shots of birds or scenery. Just standing, watching WY the fourth morning. His presence stopped feeling coincidental. He wasn't just there, he was tracking me. I noticed the glint of his lens pivoting subtly as I passed, like a security camera locking onto movement. That day, I slowed to a walk, my pulse thudding for reasons I couldn't explain. The park was empty except for us, the fog still clinging to the grass. Then, without warning, he lowered his camera and called out, "You have a runner's posture, perfect lines." His voice was calm, almost clinical. "Mind if I take a proper shot?" My skin prickled. It wasn't the request itself, it was how he said it, like he'd already taken dozens and was just being polite. I forced a laugh, said, "No thanks," and picked up my pace. When I glanced back, he was gone. Not walking away, just gone, the space between the trees swallowing him whole, that I told myself I was overreacting. Maybe he was a weirdo artist, maybe he was harmless. But that night, as I scrolled through Instagram, my breath snagged in my throat. A new account, no posts, no bio, just a username of random numbers had followed me. The profile picture was a pitch-black square. Against my better judgment, I tapped it. The account had just uploaded 3 photos. All of me. The first showed me mid-stride, hair whipping across my face, taken from the side, not the angle where he'd been standing. The second was a close-up of my cheek, glistening with sweat, the zoom so tight it looked like he'd been inches away. But the third was my apartment building, shot from across the street. My bedroom window circled in red marker. My hand shook so hard I dropped the phone. How long had he been watching me? I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of my apartment building became his footsteps. Every car passing outside was him circling the block. At dawn, I called in sick to work and paced my tiny kitchen, staring at the photo of my building. The red circle around my window looked like it had been drawn in Photoshop. Too perfect, too intentional. My coffee went cold as I zoomed in on details. The timestamp showed the photo was taken 2 weeks ago, back when I'd been battling the flu and hadn't run at all. That's when the realization hit me like a punch to the gut. He hadn't found me at the park. He'd followed me there. My morning routine, my escape, had been nothing but a stage he'd set for me. I grabbed my pepper spray and ran a finger along its nozzle, wondering if it would be enough against a man who disappeared into trees. The police station smelled like stale coffee and disinfectant. Officer Ruiz, a tired-looking woman with a fraying bun, barely glanced up from her computer as I showed her the Instagram photos. "Block the account," she said, typing something slowly. "And maybe vary your running route." I wanted to scream. Didn't she see? The timestamp proved he'd been watching before the park. This wasn't just some creep with a camera. But Ruiz just printed out a pamphlet on cyber safety and slid it across the counter. Walking home, I felt invisible, like I was already just a photograph in someone's collection. That's when I noticed the car, a gray sedan with tinted windows, parked across from my building. The driver's seat was empty, but on the dashboard sat a camera lens cap. The same matte black as the one the photographer used. I took the stairs 2 at a time, fumbling with my keys. My apartment door was slightly ajar. I always double lock it, always. The silence inside was thicker than it should have been, like the air itself was holding its breath. Nothing seemed out of place until I saw it. On my kitchen table, where I'd left the police pamphlet, someone had placed a single photograph. It was me, asleep in my bed, taken through my bedroom window. The timestamp read 3:17 a.m. last night. My legs gave out. He'd been inside. He'd watched me toss and turn, knowing I was terrified of him, knowing I was helpless. The photo was perfectly centered, the composition flawless. An artist's touch. That's when I heard it, the soft click of a camera shutter coming from my hallway closet. Adrenaline burned through me like lightning. I grabbed the heaviest thing nearby, a cast iron skillet, and flung the closet door open. Empty. Just coats and a faint smell of cologne, something musky and expensive. But on the floor sat a memory card, still warm, as if it had been recently ejected. My hands shook as I slotted it into my laptop. Hundreds of files loaded, all named with dates stretching back 6 months. The earliest showed me moving boxes into my apartment, taken from the building's rooftop. Others captured me at the grocery store, the laundromat, even through my bathroom window, the frosted glass doing little to obscure my silhouette. The most recent file was a video. I hit play before I could think better of it. The footage showed me right now, hunched over my laptop, my face illuminated by the screen. The camera was somewhere behind me. In my apartment. Right now, I whirled around, skillet raised. My apartment was empty, but the video didn't lie. He'd planted camera here, maybe more. I tore through every room, checking vents, light fixtures, even inside the fridge. Nothing. Then my laptop dinged, an email from an address that was just a string of numbers. The subject line, "Don't bother looking." Attached was another photo, this one taken from outside my window just seconds ago, showing me ripping apart my living room. The email's body text read, "I prefer you in motion anyway. See you at the park tomorrow. 5:30 morgens sharp." My vision tunneled. He wasn't just watching me. He was directing me, playing me. I smashed my laptop closed, but it was too late. The park was our place now, and he'd made sure I'd come, but I didn't go to the park. Not at 5:30, not ever again. Instead, I packed a bag and drove to my sister's place across town, too paranoid to even stop for gas. For 3 days, I barely slept, jumping at every notification on my phone. But nothing came, no emails, no new photos, no gray sedan. On the 4th morning, my sister convinced me to check my mailbox at the old apartment. Inside was an unmarked envelope containing a single photograph, the park bench where I used to stretch after runs. On it sat a bouquet of white lilies and a handwritten note that said, "Pity, you were my favorite subject." The timestamp was from yesterday. The strangest part? The photo was torn, not cleanly, but violently, as if someone had ripped it in half and then changed their mind. Only then did I notice the shadow in the corner of the frame. Another figure, tall and blurred, standing just outside the shot. Watching him watch me, I moved cities 2 weeks later. Changed my number, deleted all social media, even dyed my hair. The police never found him or his camera. Sometimes, though, I'll be in a crowd and feel that familiar prickle on the back of my neck, the certainty that a lens is trained on me. I'll turn, heart hammering, but there's never anyone there. At least, no one I could see. Last month, an old coworker texted me a screenshot of a photography exhibit downtown. The centerpiece was a series called Morning Rituals, all women running in various parks, their faces eerily familiar. My stomach dropped when I spotted one near the edge of the frame. A girl with my old haircut, my old running shoes, my exact stride. The photo wasn't dated, but I knew. It was from before I noticed him, before I became part of his collection that I still run, but never at dawn, never in parks. I stick to treadmills now, in gyms with cameras of their own. The other day, a man walked in wearing a press pass with a fancy DSLR around his neck. When he glanced my way, I froze, my throat closing like a fist. But he just smiled politely and turned away. Normal people smile like that. Normal people don't disappear into trees or leave flowers on benches. Still, that night, I dreamt of photographs developing in a darkroom, one after another, each showing a different version of me running. But the scenery kept changing, the dates rolling backward, until the last one showed a girl who looked just like me at age 6, playing in a park I'd never been to. When I woke up, my hand smelled like chemicals and my bedroom door was slightly ajar. But that's probably nothing, right? I'd booked the Airbnb for practicality, not luxury. My company sent me to Cedar Hill for a week of client meetings, and after a delayed flight and a 45-minute Uber ride through drizzle, I just wanted a quiet place to crash. The house looked exactly like the listing photos, a boxy, beige-sided ranch with a sagging porch swing, wedged between nearly identical homes on a street where nothing moved except the occasional stray cat. The key box code worked, The Wi-Fi password was scribbled on a sticky note by the TV, and the air smelled like lemon cleaner, overpowering but reassuring. Entire home, the listing had emphasized. No shared spaces. Perfect. I dumped my suitcase in the bedroom, reheated a sad gas station burrito, and fell into bed, scrolling through emails until my eyes burned. That's when I heard it creak. Then another. Footsteps. Slow, weighty, like someone testing floorboards. Above me, my stomach dropped. The house didn't have a second floor. I froze, phone clenched in my fist, listening. The footsteps paced from one end of the ceiling to the other, drag, pause, drag, as if someone was deep in thought. My rational brain short-circuited. Attic? I'd see no pull-down ladder, no access point. I fumbled for the Airbnb app and messaged the host, Mark. Hey, is there someone in the attic? Hearing movement up there. His reply popped up instantly. Nope, just old houses settling. The attic's been sealed for years. I exhaled, embarrassed. But then, a thud like something heavy being set down. My skin prickled. I grabbed my keys and bolted to the car, pretending I forgot my laptop charger. I sat in a 24-hour diner until sunrise, nursing bad coffee, telling myself I'd overreacted. But back at the house the next morning, sunlight revealed something I'd missed. A narrow door at the end of the hallway, its paint scratched around the latch. And it wasn't sealed shut at all. Paragraph 3. The door looked like it belonged in a different house, warped with peeling white paint and a tarnished brass latch that slid sideways to open. What got me was the scratches. Dozens of them, deep and uneven, like something had clawed at it repeatedly. My fingers hovered over the latch, but I pulled back. Not my problem, I told myself. Mark's message said the attic was sealed, and I wasn't about to play handyman in a rental. Still, I snapped a photo of the door and texted it to him. This doesn't look sealed to me. No reply. That afternoon, I distracted myself with work, blasting music to drown out the silence. But around dusk, I noticed something off. My toiletry bag, which I'd left unzipped on the bathroom counter, was neatly closed. The toothpaste cap I'd lazily left off was screwed back on. My pulse thudded in my ears. Did I? I couldn't remember. Maybe stress was messing with my head. Dinner was a tense affair. I ordered takeout, but barely touched it, my eyes darting to the hallway every few minutes. The attic door was still shut, but now I couldn't unsee how it didn't quite sit flush in the frame. A sliver of darkness gaped at the bottom. I jammed a chair under the bedroom doorknob that night, like some paranoid kid afraid of monsters. The footsteps started again, just past 2 a.m. This time, they stopped directly above my bed. A long, awful silence followed. Then, creak like someone shifting their weight. My breath came in shallow gasps. That's when I remembered the photos I'd sent my wife. Scrolling back, I zoomed in on the mirror selfie I'd taken in the hallway. Reflected in the glass, barely visible behind me, was a shadowy shape peering out from the attic door. A face? No, not quite. Something thinner, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. The door in the photo was slightly ajar, but I knew I'd never opened it, that I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house made my muscles tense, my fingers digging into the mattress. By dawn, I convinced myself there had to be a logical explanation, maybe an animal or some weird architectural quirk. I forced myself to approach the attic door again, this time with my phone's flashlight. The scratches looked fresher up close, though it splintered in places as if something had been trying to get out, not in. My hand shook as I pushed the latch aside. The door resisted at first, then opened with a groan that set my teeth on edge. A wave of stale, metallic air hit me, like old copper pennies in damp soil. The staircase beyond was impossibly narrow, the steps uneven and worn down in the middle, as if generations of feet had climbed them. But according to Mark, no one had been up there in years. That I climbed maybe 3 steps before my light caught something that made me freeze. The walls were covered in writing, not pencil or pen, but what looked like deep gouges in the wood. Names, dates, and the same phrase repeated over and over. He knows you're here. The most recent carving was shockingly fresh, the wood still pale where it had been scored. My blood ran cold when I realized the date was yesterday, the day I'd arrived. Above me, the attic floor creaked. Not the settling noise from before, but the distinct sound of weight shifting. Something was up there right now, moving quietly, as if trying not to be heard. I backed down the stairs so fast I nearly fell, slamming the door shut and jamming the latch with so much force it bent. That's when I noticed my suitcase in the bedroom, fully unzipped now, my clothes unfolded and rearranged in neat piles. Someone had been going through my things while I slept. I called Mark immediately, my voice barely controlled as I demanded to know what was really going on. He sighed like I was being difficult, but there was something off in his tone, of forced patience. "Look, that attic's been empty since my grandparents' time," he said. "Probably just raccoons or something." But when I mentioned the writings on the wall, the line went silent for too long. "Don't go up there again," he finally said, his voice dropping lower. "I'll have someone check it out tomorrow." The way he emphasized tomorrow made my skin crawl. I packed my essentials in a hurry, deciding to spend the night at a hotel. But as I reached for my car keys, they weren't where I'd left them on the kitchen counter. They were on the floor by the attic door, as if someone had dropped them there deliberately. The next few hours were a blur of panicked decisions. I grabbed my laptop bag and headed for the door, only to find the deadbolt locked from the inside, the kind that needed a key to open from either side. My key was gone. The windows were all painted shut. My phone showed no service. That's when the noises started coming from the kitchen, cabinets opening and closing, the faucet running briefly. I stood paralyzed in the hallway, staring at my own reflection in the hallway mirror. Behind me, the attic door began to open slowly, revealing only darkness. The smell from before, that metallic dampness, filled the hallway. Something was coming down the stairs. Not walking, not crawling, but moving in jerky, unnatural motions, like a broken puppet. I could hear its ragged breathing, wet and uneven. The last thing I saw before I blacked out was its hand gripping the doorframe. Long fingers, nails split and blackened, skin the color of something left in water too long. I came to on the living room couch, sunlight streaming through the curtains. My first thought was that it had been a nightmare, until I saw the muddy footprints leading from the attic door to where I lay. They weren't human, too long, the toes splayed unnaturally wide. My phone was on the coffee table, fully charged despite me leaving it at 12% last night. There was a new note in my app from Mark. "Hope everything's okay. Maintenance will be by today to check that attic issue." The timestamp showed it had been sent 3 minutes ago. I ran to the front door. It was unlocked now. I didn't stop to question it. I just ran, leaving everything behind except my phone and wallet. The neighbor across the street watched me go, her expression unreadable. Later, at a diner across town, I scrolled through the Airbnb listing again. That's when I noticed something I'd missed before. In one of the photos, barely visible in the hallway mirror, was the same hunched shape I'd seen in my own photo. The listing had been active for 8 years. How many guests had stayed there before me? I reported everything to Airbnb, but they just offered a partial refund and a coupon for my next stay. Mark stopped responding to my messages. For weeks afterward, I had nightmares about that attic, waking up convinced I could hear scratching at my apartment walls. Then last night, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. No subject line, just an attachment, a scan of a yellowed newspaper clipping from 1978. It showed my Airbnb house, the caption reading "Local man arrested after grisly discovery in home." The article mentioned human remains found in the walls, and how the homeowner's son had claimed the house made him do it. The creepiest part? At the bottom of the scan, someone had added a handwritten note in fresh ink. "You shouldn't have opened the door." As I read it, my bedroom door, which I definitely locked, creaked open just a crack. From the darkness beyond, I caught a whiff of that same metallic dampness that I moved apartments the next day, paying extra to break my lease. My wife thinks I'm overreacting, but she didn't see what I saw. Sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I'll catch movement in the corner of my eye, just a shadow where none should be. I've started sleeping with the lights on. Last week, I got another email, this time with a photo attachment. It showed the attic door in that house, wide open. On the floor in front of it was one of my dress shirts, the one I'd left behind in my rush to escape. The shirt was stained with something dark, and arranged in a way that suggested it had been worn. The message just said, "We miss you." I showed it to a tech-savvy friend who traced the IP. It came from the Airbnb house. The listing is still active. Right now, as I type this, there's a new review from a guest who stayed there last night. Quiet and cozy, though we kept hearing noises in the walls. Probably just squirrels. I don't know what was in that attic, but I know it's still there. Maybe it's always been there. The police wouldn't take me seriously without evidence, and all my photos mysteriously corrupted after I left that house. Sometimes I drive by the neighborhood, watching from a distance. The porch swing moves even when there's no wind. Lights turn on and off in rooms that should be empty. Last month, a new family moved in, actual long-term renters, not Airbnb guests. I thought about warning them, but what would I say? The truth sounds insane. So I just watch from my car, waiting to see if they'll notice anything wrong. Yesterday, the wife carried groceries inside while her little girl played on the lawn. As I drove away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the child standing perfectly still, staring up at the attic window. Something pale was looking back at her. I stepped on the gas and haven't returned since. But tonight, as I try to sleep, I keep thinking about that handwritten note. You shouldn't have opened the door. Because here's the thing, I never told anyone. When I first found that attic door, it was already unlatched.